me January 1st, 2013, which it's not scheduled to become effective until. It's not too late for a win-win situation at this problem. Also, I'd like to respond. There was City Manager Rodericks gave his analysis of the summary of cuts. There was no mention of salary cuts, even though there's no direct money being taken away from the salaries that the town employees currently enjoy. The previous memorandum we had with the town was for the 70th percentile, and that is now totally gone. By our looking into that, many of the town employees that are covered in this resolution would receive a pay raise. So there is salary cuts, and there's also no end date to this resolution. It's just until we decide we want to come back and talk to you again. And we think, in fairness, there should probably be an end date in there somewhere. So those are the kind of things we'd like to button up in the next month. Thank you, Council.
Any other public comments? No.
Thank you, Malcolm Dudley, 51 Catalpa. And congratulations, Elizabeth and Carrie, on your election. And Kathy, thank you for all the years of service you've given the town. I know it was both rewarding and it's also challenging. I know that we've had the ups and downs, but we appreciate your service. You know, I have this terrible feeling that in our town we're losing a lot of what made us special in the past. You know, over the years, we've viewed our employees as part of our family. And I recall when I first came on the council, Mary DeGrande was working the front desk for 35 years. She knew this town and she knew everybody in the town. And when they came there, they knew who they were talking to and they understood the issues. And it is special. And we dealt with all these years with balanced budgets, but we treated our employees fairly. And I get this terrible feeling, and a lot of my friends in town feel the same. The way we're treating our employees is not with respect that I think they deserve. When we fire half of our people that are not pleased, on information, I don't want to get too deeply in this, but on information that was not correct. We were told we had a deficit of $856,000. That was not correct. $400,000 of that was not reported of the income. We also were told that because real estate values were down, that our secured property tax revenues were down. Well, I went through a stack of our documents about that high, and what I found was that actually our secured property tax revenues were going up at the rate of 3% a year. They were not down. I also found by comparison our expenses were only going up at 1% a year. And I thought it was important to understand the basics of what was going on. And to me, it's fine, we have to deal with dollars and cents and all, but the fact is that people have to come first. We went through a difficult time in our economy, and people were losing jobs, losing their homes. And fortunately, we've seen enormous improvement in the economy. Sometimes I read that, well, we're concerned because of the economy, we need to cut back. Well, let me tell you, the last 3 years, that it's the biggest increase we've had in our economy. The stock market up 90% in the last 3.5 years. Corporate profits at record levels. Not everybody is sharing in that. Home prices, the last year, are up significantly. Time on the market's short. Things are improving. And when, I know, Jerry, you look at investment calipers, investment business and buy business, and I deal with pensions in the private sector. And if we go back to the 80s and 90s, CalPERS had returns that were so high that we made no contributions because the funding was such a high level. Now we carried 20 years in the market up at 17 and 18% a year, carried the markets to very high levels. And naturally in the last decade we've corrected that. So returns were not as high. But even as recent as a year ago, 7 3/4 was return on CalPERS investment. That was the return. But I think that we're losing sight of what's important. I would respectfully request, and I understand there's differences, honest differences of opinion, but I would put our people first. They're part of our family. Let's wait till the logical time to deal with this. That's at budget time. That gives the opportunity for the citizens to be able to be a part of that. And they're not. I mean, all of this, sort of, maybe there's been some discussions on it, but I think the community ought to be involved. They're interested, and I think that what we're doing here is wrong. It's the wrong message. It's not just dollars and cents we're dealing with. Okay, I know, we'll cut it off. But I think there's a lot involved. We're taking the wrong course. Wait until July 1st and give the people an opportunity. I'll spend some time with you. And we don't face the kind of crisis that people were pretending. Let's be honest and trustful about this. So I do request that you put it off until July. Give a chance for this to be thought out and do the right thing and treat our people in the right way. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Dave?
Joe Lewis, 99 Alejandra. Thank you for your difficult work on this. It's a very, very difficult issue. It's familiar to me because I'm a company of 100 people and we just renewed our health insurance, and so mine comes in the form of a question. Defined benefit plans in the public sector, will they be affected by the new national health care program commonly known as Obamacare? We were basically counseled that in another year, things are going to be so different that we'll all be looking at this much harder. And we made our decisions based on the fact that there's one more year, and then things are really up for grabs in a way that not any of us completely understand. Is that true or not in the public sector? And two, there's a lot of discussion, but I don't know how much we're actually saving dollar amount on these cuts for these 10 city employees. I'd like to know that number too.
The defined benefit plan, that would be the pension plan, that's not affected by Obamacare. But the health care plan that the town has, that would be affected by any federal legislative changes connected to Obamacare. The total amount that would be saved, the work furlough program saves the town approximately $14,213 over the 4 days. The retiree medical changes are prospective, not current. The flexible benefit cap saves the town approximately $24,960 a year. The town savings on the retirement swap, where the employee picks up their share over the 3-year transfer period, or the 18-month transfer period, it saves the town $92,413.
And the grand total is?
Approximately $125,000.
Okay, any other public comments?
I'm sorry, I don't know what the town budget is. I don't know what this is.
The town's budget is, yes, approximately 11 million.
11 million.
Hi, I don't like speaking in public, but I'm speaking for my husband, Kathy Jans, 95 Wilburn Avenue, and my husband, Jim Jans, is at another meeting tonight. Is that okay? I have a copy too I can submit. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot appear tonight because I have a conflict with an important meeting of citizens working on stopping the high-speed train from destroying the peninsula and the state. So I'm sending this letter to go on the record for item 11. Springing this proposal on the public and pursuing a rapid adoption of the measure during the holiday season in the waning months of the year and with a lame duck council comes, of course, as an effort to ramrod a measure sought by an outgoing council majority. To ram through proposed cost-cutting measures smacks of some sort of hubris, a lack of understanding of the council's role, which culminated in the same sort of hubris that culminated in the library fiasco. In fact, the process that this proposal has gone through suffers from the same lack of transparency. The staff report indicates that the new staff job descriptions, positions, and salaries were adopted in June by the City Council for the fiscal year 2012-13 and that shortly thereafter, council began meeting in closed session to review and discuss current salaries and benefits. This measure was developed in private meetings, and the staff report has only been available for a few days. While the timing may not have been premeditated, it just doesn't look right. Appearances are important in politics. If in fact there is no hidden agenda here, then by all means take some time for the thorough study and understanding of this proposal and its ramifications by the entire council, the new members, joining the council, and more importantly, the public, and so that this proposal receives thorough consideration and discussion. Rumor has it that this attempt to reduce costs is based on the desire to eliminate the parcel tax. Are you aware that the parcel tax was implemented shortly after the passage of Proposition 13 and was based on the survey of the town residents? At the time, the town residents were asked if they would prefer to reduce staffing and services, implement a utility tax, or create a parcel tax. The town residents overwhelmingly chose the parcel tax. Unfortunately, the parcel tax has increased little since its original implementation, and inflationary costs have far reduced its effectiveness. So what the town should probably be considering this time is an increase in the parcel tax, not its elimination with the corresponding elimination of services. My recommendation is the town did what it did when the parcel tax was first created and survey the residents to see how they feel about the continuation of expansion versus a reduction in services. And I'm submitting this for the public record. I don't think that's this.
You can pass it down.
This is from James Jans.
To either George or Teresa.
Just Kathy Jans. I'll be less than 3 minutes.
I'm Kathy Jans, and I own a home care agency where none of my staff is unionized, thank God, for SEIU. And was successful thanks to the help of Alan Carlson, who was a former member of this council. But when I was at Stanford and before that at Seton running departments, I had both represented and non-represented employees. And I think you'd be very careful when you have non-representative employees that you do not hold them in less regard than you do represented employees. I think that creates a lot of problems. And in reality, it causes potentially more unionization for all your employees, and I would be real careful that that doesn't happen. I don't think there's a need for a union to come in for the 10 or 11 non-representative. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is David Metzger. I'm the president of the Atherton Police Officers Association. I come before the council tonight to speak for the association. The resolution before you this evening is bad policy for a number of reasons, and while the POA is not immediately impacted by this resolution, we do find it troubling. First, the resolution directly affects three key members of our agency: the chief, the lieutenant, and the training manager. These employees are the police department's senior leaders. They have been making great strides in improving the way we do business. Why would you put our agency at risk by so dramatically cutting compensation and benefits to the leadership team? Excuse me. Your last-minute change on medical retirement has not provided an appropriate amount of time for your town employees and management to digest and review. The furlough you propose will impact the residents. Government is here to serve the people, not make a profit. Your new policy will compromise the town's ability to deliver services for a forecast savings of $14,000. The town should provide services except on state holidays and weekends. The idea of shutting down the government without a fiscal emergency is bad policy. The POA stands ready to bargain in good faith. We understand there are economic challenges in Atherton, and we will do our part to help. Having competitive compensation and benefits for the town employees and management is fundamental to our ability to provide police services. You appear poised to experiment with something that has worked. You do so at the peril of the residents. You at least owe it to the voters to let the newest elected representative participate. Essentially, council, with your changes, you run the risk of these workers leaving, and these are good workers. With them, they will take years of experience and knowledge of our town history. With the changes you made for the new hires, you will not attract competent people. Thank you for your time.
Other public comments? Thank you, Dave.
Ross County, Simon Selby Lane. I've been in the private sector all my life, so I can't even contemplate some of the challenges fiscally that are facing council, but the menu of changes that you're contemplating sounds like a pretty significant one. And if I were one of the employees working for the town, I would be quite concerned in being able to evaluate the choices that were being made, perhaps on my behalf or offered as a menu. But it is a competitive market out there for employees, and I think the council appears to be pretty earnest in wanting to offer a fair deal to people. And part of that means being able to provide clear numbers, going back and forth a few times to make people sure that everybody understands what's on the table, and that if that means being essentially cost neutral or revenue neutral, depending on which side of the table you're on, it should be clear to both parties that that's the case, and that you're achieving a goal that's reasonable to the town. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to ask that this process take a little bit longer so that everybody's on the same side. Because if I were an employee of the town of Atherton, I'd be pretty concerned that my salary or benefits were changing in a large way. I know I'd feel that way if that's what was happening to me at my place of employment. Thank you.
Other public comments? Wally?
Walter Sleeth, Catalpa Drive. With all due respect to citizen participation, I'm afraid we continue to move towards some sort of town hall democracy here. That's not the system of government that we have here. And I just want to express my support for the representatives that we have elected and their work that they have done over the past 6 or 7 months. And I feel it's important for you to listen, but if you have formed your opinions, you ought to go ahead with what you feel is right. And if it's right, you'll be supported later on in the elections. Thank you very much.
Other public comments?
Herb Luckner, 89 Virginia Lane. I agree completely with the council in their concern about our monetary challenges. And I think it behooves our government, as well as all governments, to come up with a solution. The solution that will work is one that I don't think that the resolution before us will make much of a dent in. Although it may establish policy for the future, and it may indeed define the way in which we are going to deal with our employee-related items of our budget that have to be trimmed. I, unfortunately, have not had time to digest the issues or the content involved. But it does seem to me that in some ways we are dealing with our independent, our non-represented employees as though they were represented. And it has always been my experience in business that given individual representation with employees, it does permit individual solutions for what may be individual hardships wherein both parties can benefit by an individualized solution. And to the extent that that has not been pursued, I would strongly recommend that the council take a look at it. Further, in view of the fact that one or two representatives of these employees has asked for an additional month in which to correct some
problems in the understanding and wording, and in which to attempt to resolve some open issues, that I cannot find justification in the financial impact at all in not granting that request as a sign of good faith and interest that we are being fair to our employees. So I'm sorry not to have anything more to say, but wanted to share my thought as to how we might indeed let everyone know that we are listening and we are willing to work together rather than separately. Thank you.
Other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comments and come back to the council. Elizabeth, you wanted to make a correction, and you've held your comments, so you go first.
So with all due respect, Mayor Widmer, some of the things that you were saying, it's a lot of rhetoric, and it sounds good on a national stage or in a larger city. We're not in a larger city. And one of the things that you did refer to is that we have a flat tax, property tax revenue. And I really respectfully disagree with that. One of the reasons is because the budgeted amount of our expected property tax revenues from last year is on track to exceed by a significant amount in actual receipts this year. And just as we talked about with our Public Works Director in our building department, some of the things that are happening in our town that are causing some growing pains or development pains by our some residents is the fact that we have a significant amount of new building going on. Every new building that is built is taking an old property tax value of conservatively $5,000, maybe $12,000 a year, and building a new structure on it that will then be sold and maybe $150,000 or $180,000 a year will be the property tax bill on that. So that's a fact, and if we have on track from just year to date, from July to now, 12 new building projects, we are on track to have increased building revenue. So I just want to make that really clear that we do have limited resources, and we need to conserve our finances as much as we can and live within our means and get our financial house in order. That's absolutely true. But I believe the cuts that we are making at this juncture, again, I want to emphasize what Mayor Widmer did say, that the cost savings is really the major cost savings that we will realize is going to be in the future retirement benefits that we are making those changes on. And what both Councilmember Doughty and Councilmember McKeithen and Councilmember Widmer was saying about our unfunded liabilities, that huge amount of money that's out there, these cuts that we're doing right now on healthcare savings, $25,000 a year for 2013, or the work furlough program of $14,000, or even the 2% of the retirement contribution of $90,000, totaling $115,000. That's not making a dent in the retirement unfunded liability. So the structural changes that we're going to be making, that I agree with, that everybody has to make across the board, and actually the state is mandating a lot of these structural changes, because not just Atherton, but cities and towns all over California have to make those structural changes. Otherwise, the unfunded liabilities are just going to gobble them up and we'll be bankrupt. But nickel and diming our 10 unrepresented employees at this stage, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Let's do it more measurably. We'll get there. It may take 2 or 3 years, but we'll get there. It's not, we're not San Jose. We're not Palo Alto. We're not Menlo Park. We don't have the mass, of savings. We have 10 employees. Like I said, one of these employees with the structure will end up having a salary reduction of 20%. So I think that when we talked about this, and one of the council members says, well, that's not very much at all, you know, what's $2,400 a year, you know, that's not much. Well, it's a lot if you are paying for childcare, or if you're having to pay, you know, a mortgage or something. So I think that we need to be more measured in it. I agree with the changes, the structural changes that we need to make, and I just want to make sure we go about it in a more measured and thoughtful way.
Go ahead.
First, I don't remember anyone in any way being sarcastic about saying $2,400 did not mean a great deal to anybody. But to get to the point that everybody's been making this evening about time and delay, I think it's important to note that, first of all, these unrepresented employees started off in our negotiations being represented. They were represented. They chose not to be represented. These negotiations have been ongoing, how long? 6 months, 8 months, 9 months? March of April, or April of last year. We have had many, many, many meetings about every single one of these points. Every single one of these points was brought to these employees by a negotiator and was discussed with the employees. The employees saw this draft resolution before any of us on council saw it. When we met last week in closed session, none of us had seen the resolution. It had been discussed in detail with the employees and our new city manager. They knew about it, and it had been discussed in detail before we did. So to say that this is a surprise and we need more time and let's wait for the new council is to really start everything all over again, and really to be bringing someone in who would have to acquire another 8 or 9 months of information to get up to speed to where we are at this point in time. So yes, there is a reason not to delay anymore, because in truth, you would be setting back the process 8 or 9 months. They have had discussions about these issues, but for some of these small points that we've been discussing, like calling it a cafeteria plan. But as far as the tiers, as far as the paying part of the PERS, that's been in discussion and negotiation for months. And one other point, this is not just about 11 employees. The big critical issue all of you are missing, the elephant in the room that all of you have forgotten about, is that this is a policy decision. This is all about negotiations for the contract that is about to expire this coming spring for the police. And that is why we have the APOA here. And that is why we have so many people talking about delay. This is a policy that is being set that won't just impact $24,000 or $92,000. It impacts the entire police force, which is 55 to 60% of Atherton's budget. That's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the article's about revenge, even though this resolution was adopted by unanimous vote of the council. That's why the talk about the parcel tax. That's why the talk about a 5-year budget plan. When we looked at the budget and had a 5-year plan years ago. It showed the town going bankrupt in several years.
When was this approved?
The result of a vote is
It's disclosable.
disclosable, and it was discussed in the meeting.
You know, I would just repeat, we've discussed this. We've met with the employees representative and made some changes as a result of that. At one point, my belief was that all of the council had approved this resolution. Because they're going to change their mind in this state. So I see no reason to delay. And I would like to make a motion that we approve this resolution with any typos corrected, so that we can do our job to protect the financial business of this town.
What we did, can we finish taking any other comments?
Go ahead.
Jerry, do you have any?
Thank you for your comments, both employees and town residents. What I said earlier is I said that whatever we do, we should strive to be fair to our employees in how we go about implementing any changes. At the same time, we should listen to any residents concerned, as well as the employees, as to what is being proposed. And we have listened. I have listened to what you all have said. And particularly, I guess particularly thinking about Steve Tyler's comments on behalf of the employees. What he was proposing was a reasoned, thoughtful idea. I think that the colleagues and I are very close, if not in complete agreement, on the policy side of things, the direction we should go. We have spent countless hours in thinking about the long-range impact on our town and the financial situation if we didn't make any changes at all. So I think from a policy standpoint, and where we want to go, we're in pretty close accord. The nub here is, okay, is the way that we want to go about implementing these changes, the roadmap that we've selected to begin implementing on January the 1st, 2013, is that roadmap something that we ought to adhere to, or is it something that we should sit down and listen one more time, 2 more times, conversation with the employees to see what they might suggest, where they have said, okay, we buy into what you want to do in the long term, give us a little more flexibility. This is the way I interpret it. Give us a little more flexibility in how we approach this. And that seems fair in my mind. And so if the majority of the council decides to go ahead on this tonight, I'm going to vote with them with the idea that in the future, the next December meeting, I'm going to raise the issue to reconsider the motion at that meeting. Thank you.
I'd like to just, based on that, that is exactly how I will also vote, because I understand that the only way to reconsider is if I vote yes. If I vote no, then I cannot bring it back to council at the next meeting, or even at the end of this meeting. So I hope that our colleagues will reconsider, and I'll make another motion to continue this item until December, and then we could go forward and continue this item until December without having to reconsider.
See you a second. My comments are as follows. I've also heard many comments tonight. There's been discussion on furloughing. I too questioned the need for a furlough and the discussion and the activity of a furlough. I spoke with the city manager and he conversed with the Public Works and the building department, and he'd indicated that over the last number of years, records had indicated that there'd been very little, if any. In fact, I think the number was one resident coming in during that week. City manager, is that?
There's limited activity during the week of Christmas.
So that was the reason that week was selected. There was discussion that this is the first we've heard of this, et cetera, and there's been a lot of inference that this is being sprung on people at the last minute. This council has met a number